Okay, we should be getting some audio here. Let's see what we've got for tonight. I have a couple of ideas. One was a scene that I saw this afternoon that I thought was pretty awesome. And it's just, typical New York summers. With fields all growing and the different types of crops that are out there. And it just created this really interesting graphic composition, we'll say. You call it a composition. It's nature. It's the way things actually are, actually come together. And anyway, it was wonderful. So we're going to throw something together like that. And just the way a scene comes together, and it makes you think, okay, what makes this work, right? Like, why does a similar silhouette of a cloud in the background appear to be a cloud? Where's the crown of the tree's foliage, could have a similar silhouette, but it reads totally different. And I don't think it's just color, I think there's something about, I don't know, maybe it's the scale and the way that it rolls, or perhaps the contrast, right? You see these things far away, you've got a lot of space, atmosphere between you and it. I don't know. Makes you think. Speaking of thinking, perhaps thinking too much. We were driving the other day and I was looking at this barn. There was a silo on it. And the way the light was hitting it was really strange. And I thought, man, that silo there, I can see the light is hitting it from the left side. It's evening light. It's softly lit because the sun was just below the horizon. So it's bouncing off the clouds. I can see the core shadow. And there's what appeared to be maybe some bounced light or something around the base of it. And I thought, that's a really strange light pattern. The way the shadow is. And that's really picking up a lot of reflected light from the ground, but it's not really picking up the color from it. It wasn't any greener, and there wasn't any, of the hues of the barn or the house around it. It was just, the same light color as the sky around it. And well, what do you know? You get closer, it was just dirt. Pause for emphasis. Think about that. All this thinking and musing and Trying to figure out what light effect is going on. Theorizing. Nope. Just dirt. There you go. All right. Let's get ground plane established here. We're going to start cleaning this up a bit, I'm sure. The dirt. Just dirt. It's kind of fun to say. Alright, evening sky was kind of, I'd almost say pink. Actually, there was this really interesting effect tonight when we were driving home. It was, my wife was like wigging out. She was like, what is going on? It's like blue over there, but it's pink over there. And I'm like, artist mode, like, well, sweetheart, blah, 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 blah. The way the light shifts as its sun's going over the horizon there. And if you observe that building right there, you'll see the reflected light, and blah, blah, blah. But it really was pretty cool. I was happy that, she's like seeing it. You appreciate these things, right? It's like just these moments. I was having this conversation with a friend on a car ride just the other day about appreciating things in the moment that they take place. We have so much media and so much, so much coming at us. You see all these, amazing idyllic scenes, waterfalls and sunsets and deserts, and they're all just blasted at you on Instagram, and their colors are all pumped up and graded so that they're like, these really punchy color combinations that just they're like candy for the eye. But then when you're actually there in the moment, when you actually see, the thing that he described was this moment when the frost has just hit for the first time and the sun comes up and melts the frost and the leaves begin to fall, and they're still that rich fall color. You have these yellow confetti dropping in the morning sun, and it only happens once. If you miss that moment, you're not going to get that moment. Maybe next year, I don't know. I think that's a part of the journey of enjoying life. I'd say of being an artist, but no, it's more just learning to enjoy what we have. It's not all condensing it down into a piece of entertainment for sale and consumption, and I'm not saying that just to, rip on the capitalist world, but I do think that we get so caught up in producing things of value, producing things that other people value, and we can then begin to look at the world for its value in that regard. Like, how does this benefit me to, instead of enjoying the moment, you're like taking the selfie, That's kind of the I guess typical way of looking at it. You know, it's easy to make fun of that. But I think we do that in so many other aspects. And we're thinking about like, oh, I could take this, you know, this moment where the flower petals or the leaves are falling, and just the way the soft breeze and the crisp air and all that, and just let me see if I can just capture this and make it a, you know, a level in a video game, or a painting or something that I can, you know, tap into that emotion that people have, and they'll buy it, right? And I think there's legitimacy to enjoying these things and creating these experiences and eliciting those responses. You know, I think there's something real there. I'm not just ripping on that. I think you connect with your audience through those things. But I also think that in the moment, you could just sit there and soak it up and just let it be what it is, without trying to figure out what you're going to do with it. Man, what is happening to Eric? He's turning all soft and philosophical. Bring back the capitalist art mercenary Eric. No, I think there's something real there. I think there's something we gotta pay attention to. So that field, one of the things that I thought was super cool was like, there was like this, you know, you got this wedge shape. Well, the first thing was, I was trying to figure out what color it was. You know, it's so easy to be fooled and think you've got it and go, oh yeah, it's yellow. It's like, well, is it really though? Is it really yellow? Or is it actually like a pinkish gray against green, and that makes it feel yellow, you know? What is this man talking about? He's insane. He's lost his mind. I'm telling you the truth. I'm trying to figure out what color it was. That was step one. I'm like squinting. My wife's looking at me like I'm crazy. She was driving. I was like squinting at this field like I'm angry at it. I was just trying to color pick in my mind, you know. But what I liked about it is you had this wedge shape, and then you had this tree line that intersected it, and then created this. This is like this kind of just little dappled fiddly bits coming through, you know. Oh, I'm looking at the chat. We got Adonis. What's up, Eric? I'm back. What have you been up to lately? What have I been up to? Oh my gosh. Enjoying summer. That's really all I can say about that. It's, you know, it's like a whirlwind. It's going so fast, and it's so packed. But like, having stuff to do with the kids, get them out biking and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's just it's idyllic, you know. It's like, it's great. There's nothing. I don't know how it could be better. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's a good time. It's a good time. And that's partly maybe why I'm saying all this stuff. Like, just trying to like slow down and soak it up and just like appreciate what it is, rather than trying to run to the next thing or trying to figure out like, you know, your next artistic venture or move or whatever. There's time enough for that, you know. But the moments of, you know, your kids riding their bike free in the sun, you know, they're not You don't have them confined to an area, constantly worried about cars coming by and all that stuff. We found a good spot to have them ride that they can just go wild, and that's just like so fun to watch. So anyway, yeah, that's how it's going. Hopefully I'm not alone in that. That other people are able to enjoy this. It's crazy times, no doubt about that. But I would also say, regardless, the things that matter still matter, and the craziness in the world isn't holding a candle to those things. How about yourself? What have you been up to? Let me see if I can clean up a couple edges here. Get these hedgerows looking a little more crispy. That's the word, crispy hedgerows. That's what the people want. Did that on purpose, given the previous conversation there. People like Mario, make it look more like Mario. True story. Had a boss look over my shoulder and say that to me. Whatever. We're not going to live in the past. We got the now. And like I said, the now. Right now is nothing to complain about. So we did a whole bunch of work in the yard. Excavation type stuff. And so the whole yard's all torn up, and it's kind of exciting. It's exciting to just commit to something. Say, okay, that's coming out. Now we got to figure out what we're doing, make this place better than we found it. And that's been going well. It's a lot of work. It's the great kind of work where you feel really tired but you feel good about it. Yeah. It's the funny thing though is you do those things and then you're like, people come over and like, what you been up to? And you're like, yo, check this out. There was like a hole here, but like then we filled it, so there's like not a hole anymore. Now it's just flat. And they're like, okay. And then they start backing away slowly as you're all excited about this, like, this flat ground that used to be a hole. That's how you know you're getting old. You gotta tell all your friends about your terraforming. Terraforming the backyard. Alright, catching up on the chat. Finally got the Apple Pencil and case for my new iPad, and I'm loving it. Awesome. The case. Anything come with the case? Like, you got the keyboard to go along with that? That can be kind of handy for shortcuts and stuff. I don't really use the keyboard in Procreate, but I have it for for other apps and stuff, and it's nice. Bought Procreate and Rough Animator before I got the Apple Pencil, though. Well, sweet. Now you got the mobile setup. You can go out and have all the power of digital in the palm of your hand. Lightweight package. It's a little commercial for the iPad right now. I almost feel guilty. They can market their own stuff. But yeah, it's a great combo. It's a regular old protective iPad case. Okay. Well, yeah, that's good. Packing light. I like that combo. I think some of my favorite work was done on the iPad in Procreate. On site. I know I've mentioned this before, but when my daughter was going to preschool, I would drop off the other kids. Would do the childcare thing with grandma, and then there was a little park kind of halfway between the preschool and grandma's house where we would drop off the other kids. And so we would go there. We had about a 15-minute break because that's just how the timing worked out of when we had to drop off and then when she had to be to preschool. About 15 minutes where we could sit in this little park and do a sketch, do a painting. And I've got a couple videos of my daughter. She would have been 3 or 4 at the time. Playing with Procreate with the painting that I just done. Painting over it. Of course, you can undo. So why not let them have at it? But that was a really great time, and it was also really awesome to do the same place over and over and over. And so it would be slightly different conditions. It was always the same time of day, but the seasons kind of changing, the weather would change. But you're constantly looking for something fresh. You don't want to do the same thing you did last time. And you start to notice new things because you're there. You're, like I said before, just being present in a place and just kind of taking it for what it is, and seeing those moments because you're there to see the those leaves fall and that one day that it's going to happen. And anyway, that's some of my favorite work is from that series and from that time, and I constantly think of that and kind of reference that as kind of a template for how I would like to continue to approach using the iPad and creating series work. I've got another park in mind, though I have to say the fact that it was kind of a natural fit, there's a story to why I was there and why I kept going back there. It wasn't just I'm an artiste and I'm just going to do this because, that's what artists do. That would, I guess that's fine, and it's good to have a plan, right? But having some context as to no, actually this is my neighborhood. These are my stomping grounds, and this is, where I take my kid to school and where we stop and enjoy our time together. And so it was much more personal and I think genuine in that respect. So I do want to be careful on future projects that I'm not trying to rehash the old magic in in a new place, under my, like you try to force it to happen too much. That certainly can happen. Anyway, I'm getting off on my own little tangent. We'll catch back up on the chat. No more slow computer. That is true. That is true. Just the way that Procreate works on the iPad. Procreate, I will gladly do a little promo for them because they make an app that it does its thing well. And it's really hard to find apps that are like that now. There's so many apps that try to do everything and please everyone. And Procreate's just doing what Procreate does. It's lightweight. It's a painting app. It's got a nice brush system, very simple layer system, very simple effects. So it's like the condensed version of what we like to use in Photoshop. Excuse me, with a couple extra niceties, So those developers were paying attention and made a nice product. So props to them. Let's see. I was talking earlier about that. What's the quality of a cloud versus a tree line when I'm like literally using the same brush. I think it's the softness of the contrast between the light and dark. Something like that. I don't know because I'm an ignorant person, but you know what? We're going to try to figure it out. I was looking at the clouds earlier today, and there were some really crisp shapes. Just kind of volumetric forms that they weren't messing around. They weren't like wispy, like would happen if I start, smudging this around like this. It was just like a column, not a column. What's the term? It was like a dollop of whipped cream in the sky. I don't know. I think there's a way that light attenuates over clouds, like you get the smooth transition from in the light, not necessarily in the shadow, but it's not all uniform. Okay. What is this guy even talking about? Cloud, attenuate, uniform colors. Doesn't make any sense. attenuating cloud colors. Let's go a little darker with that. A little brighter, grayer, bluer, all that. Trying to find the right kind of soft shadow but bounced light. Get some of that atmosphere. Again, you know, softening up the relationships there. The distance in the cloud layer. I do really love, you know, when you have this, when you have the form kind of disappear, you know, a soft edge like that where it's there, and then it just dissolves, just gone. You know it's still there. It's giving you hints. But no. What do we think about this down here? We've got this kind of warm tone that we're using in the shadow of the cloud, which I don't know if that was the right call. It's what we did nonetheless, isn't it? I'm wondering too if we want to soften all this out, make that kind of disappear as well. I think we'll go darker with it, so we'll still have it there. But again, we'll soften out that relationship. Kind of have it merge. Have these edges kind of just fall off. And then maybe we'll take this color here, establish that this is more of a rolling shape rather than these, you know, lumps. All right, we all know what this needs. This needs an overlay layer. It needs color balance. So let's go overlay. Let's go with just a soft airbrush. That's going to deepen some of those colors, make it a bit more rich. Of course, if we're in the brighter zone, you know, above middle gray, it's going to go lighter. Below middle gray, it's going to go It's going to darken it. Opposite colors, of course, are going to compete a bit. We'll go gray before they switch. So we're going to push some of that blue back there, and then we're going to go warm in the foreground here, even in the shadows. And then we'll go warm and brighter for the, what do they call those? Fields. Technical term. When you're in the farming biz, I don't know, there's probably a cooler name for it. Every business has to have like in lingo. Okay, we'll hit that warm light that I was talking about in here on the field, and we'll kind of hit a couple of these, you know, so they're not lonely. We might need to go just a real thin one in the background just to kind of like echo, right? We're saying, hey, 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 there's more. There's more going on back here. If only you would pay attention. We'll keep that, I think I'll go dark, but I want to kind of keep that cool back there. See if we can darken that down and push it to gray. You know, because we can. Why not experiment a little bit? Oh boy, that's getting too dark there. Yeah, that's got to come down. I think I did actually like that kind of fading off. I think that's got to kind of fade off here. We'll soften that out. That tree is like almost too perfect. That shape. Make any sane person mad. Trying to justify it. It shouldn't be like that. It's got to be irregular, random, natural. What is this guy talking about? Lost his mind. Okay. I'm gonna go kind of bluer, but like we're gonna go kind of middle gray, blue, and then hit these trees here, because I don't like how warm they are. You know, they're going into the background. I want them to be kind of cool against that warm field behind it. We're not messing around here. We want that effect. We are willing to fight for it. And then, you know, I think the whole sky's got to go brighter. But I think I'll handle that differently. At least I handle it on a different layer. Okay. I'm going to bring a little bit of cool here. We're still going darker. But but we're just kind of putting some cool in the center there, and that's more like reflected light from the sky. All right, checking the chat. The one thing I'm having trouble with is plein air painting. You care to elaborate? I mean, I'm, you know me. I'll just jump in and start saying whatever I think, but I would be interested in hearing what you're seeing and what is frustrating you. Can't seem to simplify shapes. Okay, do you squint when you're out there looking at a scene? Kind of like I was saying earlier, I was like squinting and trying to figure out that color. And my wife was looking at me like I was crazy, but I mean, well, she knows I am what I am, so. She was looking at me as if it were confirmation. I'll say that. Confirmation of my craziness. But squinting usually will combine your lights and darks for you. Even though I squint a lot, I can't get it to your style or a painterly loose style that I want in my paintings. Well, you don't need to go for my style. And style as it is, it's your choices as you're painting. So, part of it is your tools, part of it is your manner, like the way you take a brush stroke or whatever, but I think a lot of it is your choices. So when you look at a scene and you go, okay, I'm going to really focus on like this field, right? And you can look, like if you're looking at this right here, that is so bright. It could be more understated than that. A different artist would handle that differently. Whether or not you want to do that with value versus whether you want to do that with hue or saturation, whether you want really soft edges and things that blend into each other, or whether you want to have these really hard solid shapes, those are all the choices that you make that end up being your style. And in my opinion, that just comes with practice. Like you'll arrive at your style by exploring your options, and then the choices that you make over time. That just you're just acting on what you know can work. And okay, I feel like I'm kind of like talking to myself in circles there and just saying the same thing, but it's like a fighter's style, if you think about that. Like, does a fighter's style, is it that they've trained in a tradition? I mean, that's part of it. But it's like their choice to move in a certain way and counteract in a certain way, or like the amount of aggression or their amount of defense and all that sort of thing. Like it's the choices that they bring to the interaction, right? And so, okay, that being said, I don't want to harp too much on style, but like, I wouldn't worry about doing it in my style or in a painterly style. Let me catch up with what you're saying before I don't want to keep going if you've got more to say. Let me see. That's the part I get frustrated with, but I'm starting to realize that I need to be patient and focus on getting the focal point. Yeah, I mean, you can get lost in the weeds of like technique. Like, is my technique, you know, going to be noticed by, um, the people that I respect? Maybe that, I'm kind of putting a little bit of my own autobiography in here, right? Because I feel like that's something that I have felt. It's like, okay, I really like this painter's style, and I kind of want to do what they're doing. And maybe you're nowhere on their radar, but you kind of want to feel like, yeah, I nailed it. I hit all the check marks that um, Craig Mullins would do, or that Feng Zhu would do, or whatever. Uh, and at some point, I just kind of stopped thinking about that so much, and I think I've thought more about style in terms of like the hallmarks of what choices you make, or what choices you're kind of like decisions that have already been made that determine a style. Um, so that is like, if you're talking about edges, hard edges or soft edges, you could give yourself limitations and say, I'm only going to work with a soft brush, or I'm only going to work with the lasso tool. Those are going to be two very different styles that emerge with that rule set. Um, yeah. I wouldn't worry about that too much. I mean, I hate to be so blunt about that, but like, get out there and do the hard part of like the painting the things that you don't really want to do, and kind of that extra time of setup to like compose and kind of figure out like what's going to go where and how it's going to be balanced, or at least figuring out whether or not you want it to be balanced as an image. And then the other part is like the part that you like, so I'm talking about doing the grunt work that's like nobody wants to do that, right? And if you don't do that, then you're not going to get farther than anyone else, because everybody does the parts that they like. It's harder to do the things that you don't like. So I would say start there with, okay, the shape thing, simplifying shapes is really frustrating. So I'm going to make sure that I spend time on that every time. And I personally feel that frustration is like climbing over the cliff's edge before you get to the top. It has to, like, it's like the whole like no pain no gain thing or whatever. And there's that phrase with the warrior painters, the no plane no gain for plein air. Play on words there. But no, I think like you don't build muscle mass when you're working out unless you push to that beyond your comfort zone, to where you're actually like your body is telling itself, hey, look, we've got to put on more muscle mass here if we're gonna keep working this load, right? And if you don't put that load in, then you're just not gonna get it. Sorry, I'm kind of thinking about what I'm doing with this image as well. This, I think I'll go with luminosity. Right, so you got to do the stuff that is not fun. But then for the focal point, I would say make that the fun part. Look for the thing in the scene, in the part that you're at, that you go, I like that. Like I like the way that, like if you're observing like people in the park or whatever, like maybe it's your sense of humor. Maybe you go, you know what? there's an awkward interaction going on over there, and I think it's kind of funny, or I think that it's interesting, or whatever, or like, the way that kids play, and there's just such a freedom in the way that they play, and they're just, it's like you've got to tell them to quiet down, you got to tell them to like temper it. Left to their own devices, they're just, they go wild and have a blast. And so if you're thinking about that and you're trying to capture that, like the focal point of this image is like the wildness of these kids playing, or just their crazy imagination is, ones that, they're pretending to be on a ship in a storm or whatever, and they're just on the like slide in the park, so they're like, those are the kind of things that I think, in my opinion, should be your focal point, because you care about those things. Like you like that. The focal point is the part that you want the audience to look at. And if you kind of choose that arbitrarily, or you choose it because like, I don't know, you think that that's what the audience will want, that's not like, I hate to use like the artsy term of like your voice, but it really is like the things that you care about and the things that you want to talk about, like that's your voice. If you're interested in old rusty cars, then paint old rusty cars and make the focal point the thing about that old rusty car that really pulls you in, like, oh, it's the way that the chrome is still beautiful but has these little bits of corrosion, and you can tell that there's it used to have this wonderful paint job but it's sun bleached, like those are the kind of things that are like, if that's interesting to you, it's probably interesting to someone else. And if it's not interesting to you, but you do it anyway because you think people will like that, I think that's gonna kind of come through in your work. Okay, so that's more like high level. You're thinking about the future kind of thing. But in order to keep it fun, and in order to like even just technically get over that hurdle of, I need a focal point, I need simplified shapes, I need to point everything to that area. That's how I would approach it. I would say the technique and the labor of making it a good image, do your due diligence on that. That's like doing your chores in the morning or whatever. Like, it's like doing the dishes so that when it's time for dinner, everything's ready. But then what are you going to have for dinner? I don't know. Probably you should pick something you like, right? Okay. Man with all the metaphors here, but hopefully that was helpful in some way. I don't want to like beat it to death as you're, you brought something up, and now I'm like, you got to do this and you got to do that, and it's like an hour and a half tirade. but that is what I would recommend. I'm getting a weird glitch here. I'm gonna jump over. There we go, and we're back. Let's see if that. No, it keeps giving me a brush stroke that goes like all the way across the screen. I don't know why it's doing that. Sometimes Chrome decides that it is more important than everything else, and has a little fight with Photoshop for interpreting what you want done with the tablet. At least that's the computers, according to Eric. So it definitely was not that color gold. I am playing with this to like kind of modify the scene that we've got to get the feel that I'm going for. But I don't want to push it so far that it breaks, you know. That being said, though, I wonder if, you know, we put a little edge on these so that the saturation is really harsh. That's just kind of a weird effect, but I don't know. So yeah, recap on all that. Do what you like and do what you don't. You gotta kind of do both of it. Both of it. You gotta do both of it, bro. You gotta do both. It is exciting though. It's cool that you got the equipment. You're out doing it. It's not always fun, but I think the fun comes, you know, with anything. Um, I just this week started biking again. I used to mountain bike a lot and loved it, and it is connected with art in a way. I was early on. I was doing contract work, um, artwork, and it was this time of year. Beautiful outside, and I'm looking out the window, kind of regretting my life choices. Like, okay, this whole like art for video games thing seemed really cool, but now I'm literally inside all the time trying to paint scenes that are like cool, and I'm looking out my window at the sun go down every day and just not having the chance to be out and enjoy it, and live it. You know, it's like I was saying before, being in the moment, living out these experiences, appreciating them, as opposed to trying to craft them, you know, in a different format. So anyway, I'm looking out the window and just going, what am I doing? And I was living with my parents at the time because I had just gotten off an internship with Garage Games. So this is shortly after high school. And anyway, so I hop on my dad's bike, which is actually more like it's meant for the road. You know, it's like the thin wheel bike. And I went down into the local park, which is more like a nature preserve, I guess you could, you know, but for comparison. And it was amazing. I mean, absolutely like natural high. Just looking at nature, we're looking down in this gorge. As you're just kind of whizzing by, you know, it was like hiking on steroids. If I've described it that way, it was like just perfect. You know, the weather's perfect, the scene is perfect, and you're real and you're living it in the moment and elevating your heart rate and all that stuff that goes along with bike riding. And anyway, caught the bug, fell in love with it, and then later found out that it can actually be kind of hard. I had some friends who were also bikers, and so when they, you know, when I told them that I had tried it out and I really liked it, you know, they're like, "Oh yeah, let's go," you know, and they both kicked my butt. You know, one did very technically challenging things, like riding down stairs and things like that. And then the other one did just physically demanding stuff. Like he was just way more fit and could go farther, faster. And anyway, I think you just like you need those moments of realization in whatever practice it is, whether it's, and you know, that's like purely recreational. I think you need these moments of realizing that the well is deep, right? Like you can experience something and enjoy it, and then you decide whether or not you want to take that to its potential. But it's a challenge, and it's a journey, and it takes work if you want to do that. And so, anyway, I feel like an old man. Well, you gotta work hard. True. It's true. No matter like how tired we are of hearing it, it's not any less true. Okay, I could probably do something down here. This is getting, I think it could get closer to gray. Let's go a little darker. Because that purple, I think it makes the green greener, of course. But it's getting rather intense in the shadows here. And it's fun how light, especially shadows, change their quality in different light scenarios. So here, it's like we can do some hard shadows in this area that we've got light, and we're kind of implying that all this is in shadow from like a cloud or something from above. So it's more soft, overcast type scenario. In which case, the light is bouncing around a lot more, and so your shadow has a very diffused, kind of feathered edge. It gives us something also to kind of like bounce back and forth in the edge quality. I guess we were talking about that a little bit before, like how to get those painterly strokes, and that, so part of, I think, what's painterly is like confidence. So that comes with time. Okay, I think that's the biggest part. It's like what makes it painterly. It's like the fact that you can see the artist brushstroke, that it wasn't like doesn't feel like it was labored over. That doesn't mean you didn't think a lot about where that stroke needs to go and how it needs to be applied, and that you didn't, practice that a lot. But it is, I think, at least the appearance of confidence that like it was decisive. You made a decision. Again, style is decisions. You made this decisive stroke. You said, okay, I'm seeing this. That's what I'm gonna lay down. And along with that is, what you're choosing to emphasize, where you're choosing to like make a hard edge, a delineated shape, and where you're kind of letting things blend together. Again, it's a decisive thing. You're saying, this is important, this is not, right? So where things blend together, you're just kind of saying, okay, that's the background, That's it's not important that you see every little leaf on this tree. It's important that you get the impression of its overall form and position in the scene, you know. But if I want this field to be important, then I've got to have these. Okay, whether it's crisp edges or whether it's that saturated edge there that, you know, we were playing with that concept. You know, that's a decision to draw the eye to that area using that technique. So what makes it painterly, in my opinion, it's those things. You know, you could more bluntly describe painterly as like, I don't want to say sloppy, but like, yeah, bold's not even the right word. I want to say it in an objective way, not in a like clearly, like I'm trying to make it sound better than it is or make it sound worse than it is. But just to say objectively, it's like, it looks like you didn't care when you put that mark down. You know, it looks like you weren't being careful. Okay, messy. Those might be better ways to describe what we consider as painterly. But again, I think that comes back to decisions, decisiveness, that you've made the choice. I'm going to make this mark, and I'm not going to fuss over it. You know, it's like, you know, a craftsman, the whole like measure twice, cut once, right? You think about it, you make your decision, make the cut, and it's done. There's no uncutting that piece of wood. And I think that it's kind of the same, or at least it's a close enough metaphor to work. This tree right here, it's got problems. Tree's got problems. It's really round. So we could merge it together with this one. Talking about simplification. You know, we could put that together, and then we can say, like, kind of cut this shape here, so it's more like this rising shape here. And we might think, okay, what about this? What about this cloud in the background there? Do we want this tree to like lead us into that? Maybe, you know. So maybe we start doing these diagonals. So we're kind of leading the eye into that. Excuse me, cloud in the background. I'm just going to grab a couple of these colors here from the mid-ground and start kind of pushing them in there, so it looks like there's areas where the leaves allow a little bit of the visibility of what's behind it. Okay. Okay, so if we're assessing this, one second here. And we're looking for like the flow of this image. You've got obviously this shape here, right? Then you got this going on here, and you got these. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. And then in the background, we've got let me do this one again. That's like that. So it's almost got like this S zigzag thing, and you can actually see there's another one there, right? And so that gives your eye something to follow. If you follow that back in space, right? And then finally we've got these clouds, which are almost like mountains, I think, these peaks, and then these kind of flat valleys, right? And I think you could simplify that even more, right? Again, if you squint and you go, okay, let's not go. So we'll look at those different things that I analyzed there, and let's say, okay, let's not go that kind of mid-level shapes. Let's look at the very biggest, very large shapes. I'm looking at this. I'm seeing this. And I'm seeing, well, I'm seeing this shape in the background, like that, and this shape here. And I think if I were to bring up some, I suppose we could also talk about these, you know. Like that. If I were to bring up some old plein airs that I did at the park, that's often how I would do it. I'd squint. And of course, there was a lake there, you know, so that kind of gives you a natural shape. You know, that's going to reflect your sky color, and so it's going to be lighter than your tree line on the other side of it. And so, like, I would start there. I would think, okay, I see the tree line in the background, and I'm just going to make a just biggest brush that can handle that. Fill that in. Okay, now I'm seeing maybe some like slivers in the midground, kind of like what we have here, like this. You know, it gives you some of that perspective, and it creates the ground plane, even though you're looking at a lake in the example that I'm talking about, but we're not looking at it. Even though you're looking at a lake, if you start putting in some of those slices, and the thinner you make them, like it's kind of the closer you are to the horizon, or the well, I guess in both sense, like it's like the flatter your view is. So it's either farther away or you're closer to the ground. And then of course, okay, so let me actually draw that shape so you can understand what I'm talking about. So if it's like a thin slice like that, then you're like close to the horizon. If you take that same shape, but it looks more like this, then you got to be farther from your horizon, or the eye has to be higher off the ground in order to see a shape like that. So if you get those shapes wrong, that's going to mess up your scene. It's going to mess up your perception of depth. So again, like finding those shapes, the shapes aren't just like graphic, they're also like, it's information, and it can make your scene look like it's vast, going off into the distance, or it can make your scene feel like it's flat on a piece of paper, right? And so get those shapes right and take the time to get those shapes right, because they give cues to the eye, to the brain, about how to interpret this image. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a flat image, looking at a flat canvas or screen with different colors on it. So what's the illusion that's making you believe that you're looking at space? Okay, so getting those shapes right is important. So I would go with tree line, then like those sliver midground shapes, and then I would bring in my foreground shapes. If I was like, usually I'm on the shoreline, so I would have like a tree right in front of me or something, and I would try to so I'll just give an example of that. I would try to make it. Let's do natural drag. That would be a good one, I think. I would try to make it kind of interesting, right? Like, what I'm seeing, but maybe a little bit more connected with the rest of the image, like compositionally. So like if I saw a tree that was like, the tree like came up like this, and then it had like a nub. Okay, and again, you're focusing on the things that you think are interesting. So if I think that nub is interesting, then I might place it differently. I might render it a little more with a little more contrast. Okay, so I got a tree that's shaped like that. Now, how do I make that fit into the background scene? And of course, I'm kind of speaking hypothetically, because I'm remembering a place that I've been, and this is not that scene, right? So we'll try to make this work. But yeah, so I might do something like this. I might think, okay, so first of all, I could either tilt it a little bit to make it more dynamic, or make it like flow into the parts of the scene that I want the eye to go to. So like, okay, I don't want to mess up this tree line right here by placing this tangent to it. So maybe I'll like move it over a little bit like that. And maybe I want it to be stable. Like, so, being in more like this, that's implying that it gives more, motion and more of a dynamic feel to the scene. But if I wanted this to be more kind of serene, like the calm before the storm, then I might stabilize this a little bit, like make it a little more straight up and down, right? And so let's see, do I want that? How about right there? Somewhere in there. So I don't want to cut, I don't want to go tangent with that. And maybe I'll adjust it a little bit so that it's not parallel either. It's a little bit more dynamic. Let's see if I pull this bottom over here. I'm also thinking I don't want to get too close to the edge. And so we're balancing a couple of ideas here. I'm even tempted to flip it over, but we'll just go with this. We'll say we'll go like that. And then you can think, okay, so now you've got foliage on this, and do you have to do the foliage perfectly exactly as you see it? Well, it's usually good to like use the general template of the way that you're seeing it in nature. It's that way for a reason, and so you deviate from that too much, and then it just doesn't feel real. In fact, the way that these branches are like kind of Y-ing off, for a lot of trees, that doesn't make too much sense. They might stagger. But okay, so let's say we've got that. And so now I'm thinking, okay, what areas in the scene do I want to emphasize? So if I want to emphasize that cloud and this field, and I'm kind of going to bring this down towards it, so that if you followed that form, you would follow it right into the areas that I want you to see. And then I might do that, for a couple other areas. And again, I want to make this crystal clear. These are decisions. This is not how every artist would do this. I'm often, I think, more heavy-handed with my choices. Like if I want you to look there, I'm just going to point there with an arrow. Say, look at that. That's pretty heavy-handed. That's not particularly, subtle. And so, okay, if you're thinking about that, maybe you want to do it in a more subtle way. But this is where we're taking what we're seeing, and now we're starting to design a scene a little bit more. So I might, say we've got some other things in the foreground here. And we might also be thinking about, okay, how do we reference foreground to midground to background so that there's associated shapes, right? So we've got like this shape here, and then we got this shape here, and we're saying, really, essentially, these are the same thing, it's just that one's farther away. And so that gives us a cue for distance. And so we might do that again here, okay? So if we just have one that's just as full as those. Let's see how we want to do this here. But we just have it much closer, larger. Might have to go a little more full with that. And we may even have to get into some leaf shapes, which I'm not dying to do. I want to keep it a little more abstract. And again, with choices, I'm using a brush that's just like, it's just a blob, right? We could be using a stamp. We've got stamps with leaf patterns, if we wanted to do that. This one right here, like if we wanted to go this route, we could make that more a graphic, readable, universally understood leaf shape, right? Again, those are choices. And you can accomplish it with just a rough brush like we had there before, natural drag brush. As long as you get the shape right. The shape in this case being the canopy of the tree that should emerge from a branch that is fighting against the elements to go upwards towards the sun, right? And those are just shape cues, right? See, and I was doing all this as an example. I don't even know if I want to keep it. I see a full scene there, but this works too, and again, I keep saying it. Oh man, I feel like a 90s commercial. Decisions. All right, I'm going to read the chat now. Also, I finally figured out how to draw the proportions for Spider-Man's eyes. I'm curious. There's always there's got to be a design Bible for these characters, like how they're constructed. Um, it's been a long time since I've paid attention to that. I definitely would early on. You've got your favorite characters and you want to do them right. Did you find a guide for that, or did you come to your own conclusions about it? We'll take some of this purpliness and we'll go almost gray with it. And we'll start to, oh man, that's still, that is so dark in there that this near black is the light color. How crazy is that? You've gone too far. Though it may also be jittering with the bright color here. So I don't want a lot of contrast there. I want that to be really subtle if I'm making any kind of intonation that this is light, or slightly lit on that edge. I want it to be just a hint. Oh, excuse me. Checking the chat. I studied from the great Spider-Man artists and came up with my own conclusion. Cool. That's cool. I think that's either way would be a legitimate way to go. But to actually do the analysis yourself, I think is a helpful exercise. I think I'm going to do like one more thing with this. Maybe try to like pump up some colors. Obviously our value ranges for, excuse me, more in the low key, which is fine because it means that our brightest colors or our brightest areas are able to have the highest saturation. But we're just going to play with this a little bit here. So this is just another way of doing it. You can go in your curves and then you can go channel by channel rather than doing a color balance and then going in, that's structured by like mid, dark, and highlights, right? Whereas here, we can choose, excuse me, with a more specificity, like how much blue is in. So this is obviously our white, that's our black over here. So we can say, okay, less blue around the black, and then maybe we want a little bit more blue in the midtone right there, Maybe we don't. So that spike too tells us that spike it's got to be our sky. So do we want that sky to be more blue or less blue? And yeah, it's just a handy little tool. And then, of course, if you know how the colors mix, red, green, and blue, of course, if you mix them in equal parts, you get a brighter gray. The more you add, and as long as they're equal, it's gray and it gets brighter. When you drop one out, or rather, let's say you spike one up, then it's going to move more in that color. So, like this green, for example, if we, let's say in our bright colors here, so let's kind of lock these in, and then we'll push the green up in that, just in the bright tones. It's right there, you can see in the sky and in this field that pushes all that more towards teal, because it's already got enough blue in it, and this has already got some red in it. So the combination of green and red is going to be yellow, and of course the combination of blue and green is going to be teal. So if you know what those relationships are, then you can manipulate that right here. And even though we're looking at trees, I'm really tempted to like pull green out of that zone. Things are not always as they seem. Things are not always. Now you think a tree's green, and you could go with like a yellow, like a gray yellow, and it's still going to end up looking like a tree. It might look less sickly even, oddly enough. What was I even talking about? I got sidetracked. I don't know. Doesn't even matter anymore. This man, just like a rambling old man. Okay, I'm not old. Trying to convince myself I don't need to grunt every time that I bend over to pick something up. Okay. You're not old if you don't act old, I think. That's my hope. And see if maybe we'll just set this to color. Do we like it as color, or do we like it in normal mode? Color. Normal. I think doing it in color mode would, or color blend mode, would do much better for print. But actually, I'm just not that crazy about the difference. It just seems so subtle, so subtly different. It's almost not worth going down that road. Maybe saturation or hue. Let's go hue. Yeah. Yeah, it barely does anything for me, so I'm just gonna ditch that. And I think I'm pretty happy with this. I might do, like, if we did solid color, we'll just pick a middle gray, we'll set this to overlay, and then we can start playing with this to see if we can just get like an overall tone. That's got a nice almost sepia kind of faded oil painting look to it. The tones that we were ending up with before, with some of those like blues, grays, and like sharp contrast with the dark, it almost had like a filmic, like a 70s filmic look to it. I mean, I know I'm probably offending everyone who cares about film, but that's how I perceived it. It's having this like kind of antiquity to it, but like not so far back. Sepia, getting into like this area, that makes it feel to me like this was a medieval scene or a Renaissance type scene that has faded, that the colors have faded, and so it has that golden hue to it. Whereas, let's see if we can find it here. I think there's this like off green, somewhere in here that like kind of feels like, to me, like this is like a film from Vietnam or something, Totally different feel. Do we want those trees? I like. I think I will probably forego the trees. I like it when we're looking at it like this. You get that sense like you could have like the dude here with the spear. The like classic concept art thing. Like it's more of a lived-in scene. But this to me feels more like an invitation to go into that space, as opposed to like this feels like you're hedged in this, like you're on the edge of the woods looking out into a space, and like so like the where you are is already defined in the image, whereas this, I think, to me, there is something real about like the invitation to like dive in and look at different parts and like kind of imagine that you could be traveling out there. Like that's a whole other conversation, but that is something that I do think about in work, and I think it's important. I'm going to stop there. I had this whole other scene that I was thinking about painting. I had a reference up over here with like palm trees and stuff like that. But this was something just from memory that I saw tonight when we were driving, and I thought it was awesome. I thought just really all that I thought was interesting was the way that kind of wedge of wheat, as it's just turning that nice golden color, the way that made this nice graphic shape on the hillside, on these like kind of low rolling hills, and then got broken up by the tree line, so it was just beautiful to me. And then there was also this moment as we were driving where I saw the clouds in the background and they just felt so distant, and I noticed that the shapes kind of echoed the shapes of the trees, but somehow that read it as a cloud and this read as a tree. And I know it's like, it seems like the weirdest, most juvenile thing to be thinking about, but that's what I was thinking about. And so anyway, that's what I brought into this tonight, and just kind of wanted to play with that and see if I could pull that out. Frankly, I was really only thinking that I would like play with the idea for a couple minutes and then jump into another scene. But it was interesting to me, and so I kept going with it. And again, kind of circling back around to what we talked about earlier with focal point being that like that's the part that's interesting to you. That's the thing that you're talking about. And not to go too far on that analogy, but like if you're talking with friends about something you don't care about, it is not interesting. It's not interesting for anybody. If you care about something, of course, you can scare people off if you don't have a great presentation. And then that's where the technique and the kind of leading your audience along to see the same thing, to appreciate the same thing that you appreciate about it, That's craftsmanship. Okay, and that's the harder part. So, I know I give that spiel a bit, but I think this maybe is a little different take on it. But like, you do the part you hate, you do the part you like, and not necessarily in equal parts either. I think the stuff you hate is going to push you to do better work. The stuff you like is going to push you to do. Is going to keep you doing work. It's going to motivate you to keep doing work, and it's the whole reason you. Presumably that we get into this in the first place because we like it and because there's interesting things that we want to share. And I think it's what makes your work interesting. Once you get the technique down, once you're able to communicate it well, and you've got something worth communicating, then people are going to be interested. So, yeah, that's the interesting conversation. Thanks for prompting some of that and asking questions. And of course, it's way more interesting to have a conversation and to try to help problem solve than it is for me to just breathe into the microphone and crack dad jokes. But anyway, this was fun. I'm going to wrap it up here tonight. Thanks for joining in, and it was a good conversation. Hopefully you were working on something and got some mileage out of your own stuff. And, I say this, that we're going to meet next week, 9 o'clock. Of course, the days are getting later. It's always late, lately. It's just really hard to wrap everything up and get the kids to bed when the sun is still up. There's still light in the sky. And so, honestly, being realistic, I don't know that we're going to hit the 9 o'clock mark very much in the next month or so. And eventually, I know I've said this a lot, but eventually I do want to change the format and change the time. And so maybe we'll put the feelers out. We'll put a poll out for what people would be interested in and what I can accommodate. I think my biggest hurdle, I think, is that the kids are in bed after 9, and then that's what makes this easier. Whereas if I do a daytime event, which is less taxing on me because I don't stay up late, then it's kind of less reliable for audio and interruptions and that sort of thing. And I also, I want to be available for my kids. I don't want to just like, oh well, Dad's doing his like internet painting thing, so you can't go say hello or whatever. I don't really. That's not. Those aren't memories I want to make for my kids, right? So I'm kind of mulling that over. I'm trying to figure out the best time and the best way to approach it so that I can do quality work and do that without sacrificing anything else that I care about. So you got to weigh it out and you got to make a decision. So I'm open for feedback. If we can do something shorter, if we can do something more focused, or if really everyone just prefers the kind of open fields, like whatever ends up happening is what happens, and however long it takes is however long it takes. If that works for you, then that's what I've been doing all along. But I do feel like it's time to transition into something perhaps a little more structured and more concise. Okay, well, that being said, I'm going to wrap it up. And thank you all for joining in, and have a good night.